Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you are a returning visitor, you already know that this is my deep dive into a wonderful, immersive, expanding deck called the Egyptian Tarot by C.C. Zane and the Brotherhood of Light. And just in case you are new here, let me give you a quick rundown of what I do every night. Every night before I go to bed, I riffle shuffle my mass market version of the Egyptian Tarot, which is readily available and so easily replaceable, and I riffle shuffle it to my heart's content and I pull a daily draw card. The question I ask while I'm shuffling is, what would I benefit from giving my attention to in the following day? So I pull the card, and then I pull the matching card from my very out of print charcoal gray and white deck of the same Egyptian Tarot. Same deck, different eras. And I look at them, I see the differences, I notice the similarities, and generally they're almost the same. With the exception of perhaps one card in the deck which is very different from between the two. And then I ask for help from my trusty Tarot of the Holy Light by the wonderfully brilliant Christine Payne Towler, which I've been using for at least 6 months now, and so I'm starting to get used to it more and more. And so I do a 3-card spread to help me unpack the daily draw from the Egyptian Tarot. The 3 cards are the significance of the daily draw for me in the following day. The second card is the challenge for me. Both could be either positive or negative. And then the third card is advice. Yeah? Significance, challenge, advice. And then I go to sleep. And then I wake up and I live my day. And at the end of the day, I come back and I look at the cards again and I do my analysis and I write up my notes and I do this video, which is where we are now. So friends, let me show you the daily draw card for me for today. Here it is. You just saw that the daily draw card for me for today was none other than the Hanged Man. Perhaps you already know that the Hanged Man is my self-identifying card. And in many other decks, it's a little bit difficult to understand why that card would be my favorite card in the deck. The associations are not particularly relevant to me in other systems. However, in this system, this card has much more relevance for moi. Let me show you the cards right here. There they are. Now I say they because we've got the more recent redrawing in color, and then we've got the older version in charcoal gray and white. And if you'll notice, the images, I don't know if you can tell, they are practically the same. They're practically the same. They're easier to see. The Hanged Man, the coins coming out of the hands, the line work is much easier to see in the color version than it is in the black and white, but they're basically the same. The only real difference is the number of stars in the constellations. Yeah, there are about 2 more stars in the color version than there are in the black, charcoal gray and white version, but they're both pointing, or they're both indicating the same constellation, which is none other than Pisces, which you can see is the association for the card. This card is Pisces, which is interesting, right? Well, I think it's interesting. We also see that the Hebrew letter in the bottom is Lamed. The cards are beautiful. The vines winding their way up the columns. We see the hanged person with a skirt that doesn't fall down over the face. Clearly drawn by a man who's never worn a skirt. And then the coins coming out of the hands. We got the legs in the position of the emperor, if you'll notice, yeah? The emperor with the legs in the 4. We've got the legs in the 4 here as well. Very similar to many, if not most, hanged men cards, hanged person cards. Although this one does have grapes. Did you notice the grapes? I think that's interesting too. Now, why is this more relevant to me in this system, I'll say? Well, my moon is Pisces. My moon is in Pisces. So Pisces is relevant to my natal chart. And so having Pisces being the association for the Hanged Man in this card is gratifying to me. So what does this say? The Hanged Man points to Pisces, which is the domicile of Jupiter, from which these mutable waters' vital attributes enter our world. Yeah? Jupiter is very happy and at home in Pisces and beams beautiful energy through Pisces, and the mutable waters energies enter our world with Jupiter. Yeah, the mutable water flavors Jupiter's behavior in our lives. In one way of thinking about it. Also, like I said, we had Lamed here. Lamed means ox goad. Yeah, the thing that you use to prod and move a goat forward. So it's a kind of tool to make things happen, to get people to do things or to get animals to do things. But it also means to teach or to learn in Hebrew, which is an interesting thing, yeah? When we think of the Hanged One being the one who may have something to learn, and as a result, maybe have something to teach. Now, if we also think of the rune associated in the 12th position, that is one of my favorites, Yera. Yera looks like this. It looks like two arrows pointing in, or it looks like the greater than and less than symbols from math kind of linked up together. That's Yera. And that points to harvest, reward, harmony. It's the end of a cycle. And so it also can mean like a year, but it's not a year like a solar year. It's a year of an agricultural year in a non-equatorial climate where there's only one harvest season per year. Make sense? So we've got all of that wrapped up here in the Hanged Man, which is interesting because we don't have all of that wrapped up in the Hanged Man in, for example, the Smith-Waite deck or even the Thoth deck. Although, well, anyways, so yeah, Thoth associates different Hebrew letters to the Hanged Man, a different Hebrew letter to the Hanged Man. But again, here we are, the Hanged Man, Lamed. And so what are the significances of the Hanged Man for me for today, according to the guidebook? Well, we have the very common one of sacrifice or expiation, but also forgiveness of enemies, forgiveness of those who have wronged us as well. The material world may dominate the soul. Now we've plunged all the way into the material realm in this card, and we're about ready to start the ascension back up the other side. It could mean wasted effort. It could mean the ebbing of life forces, which would make sense. I mean, if you're hanging upside down by one leg, your life force would start ebbing after a very short amount of time. It's asking us to choose after very careful consideration. That material temptation can be conquered, though, and a suggestion to give without thought of being repaid. Yeah, though there could be disappointments. So we've got the possibility of disappointments. We've got the possibility of our life force ebbing away, although if what ebbs also flows, right? The material world has taken over, has had such a great influence on our lives that now it's perhaps time to think of another path. And so there's that pause here, the wait, the time of expiation, reconsideration, but also the harvest of what we have sown. The material realm dominating our lives is not necessarily 100% a bad thing. We came into this world to have material lives, right? To be the material girl, as Madonna said. Otherwise, we'd stay in the spirit realm. We wouldn't come into these bodies and be co-creating. We came in here to have a material experience and to be immersed in the material. But then we also want to remember that we are spirit here, having the experience. And so yeah, maybe we have been so engrossed in the material that this is the time where we pause and start waking up. And learning from the experience we've had in the material, and being ready to perhaps teach as a result of that. We could be over idealistic in this card as well. But there are also the stirrings of other things that are indicated here, the stirrings of creative ideas, and the suggestion to apply imagination, which I thought were interesting ideas for this card, because we don't often think of imagination and creativity associated with the Hanged Man. So I was very pleased, I was gratified. And maybe that's because of this Piscean association here, the water element. Yeah, Jupiter, expansive, emotionally expansive and generous and beneficent and abundant. So an abundant of perhaps even psychic and unconscious understanding rising to the surface in Pisces. So maybe that's coloring this Hanged Man that we usually think of as the sacrificing one, or maybe the traitor, or the one with a new perspective, a very airy kind of association. But here we've got a lot of water. And so that was the card for me for today, which I thought was interesting. I was, again, very gratified because, as I say, I self-associate with this card and the moon. Two cards that many readers don't really look so favorably upon, but for me, they're my jam. So, the bread on my butter. Here we have now the three cards that help me to unpack this card for me as it could apply to me for today. Here they are right now. You just saw the three cards. The first one was reversed. I wasn't too excited when I saw that, frankly. When I see the Hanged Man and then the card that is the first, let's explain that for you, kind of card appears reversed. It's my first feelings were, uh-oh. So this isn't necessarily the most happy, joyous, and free version of the Hanged Man. Maybe there's a cautionary note to pay attention to. So we got the Knight of Wands reversed. One of my potential pitfalls, by the way. Then we have Temperance upright and then Justice upright. When I saw those two coming after, I thought, okay, not only because they're upright. Now, reversed cards are not bad cards. They're not cards that are saying you're done something bad, you're going to do something bad, you're going to have a shit day. It's not what it is. They're not negative cards. They are cards of medicine. They're telling us to pay attention to potential difficulties, to potential challenges, to pay attention a little bit more carefully to this aspect of our lives. It's not picking us up by the collar and slapping us across the face and saying, you dummy, you're going to fuck up. Sorry if that offended you, but that's not what it's saying. So, and you might be asking, well, so why are there reversed cards in that deck? Maybe you're asking that, just in case you are. Every time I shuffle the Tarot of the Holy Light, I split half of it, turn half of it around, and riffle shuffle. Yes, I riffle shuffle. But I'm constantly shuffling reversals into the deck, because this deck is very definitely intended to be used with reversals, and so that's how I've used it since the first day I started shuffling it out of the box. Okay, frankly, the Egyptian Tarot is also intended to be worked with reversals, but I didn't feel up to the task. I haven't felt up to the task, and I probably won't feel up to the task until the end of this deep dive, because doing all of that and then doing the video is this is about my level of comfort for right now. So because this is where my comfort level is, I'm not going to push my, not comfort as in not easy chair comfort, but if I pushed past it, it would start being stressful in a potentially negative way, I think, for me. And so knowing my limits right now, I'm only using one deck with reversals. Again, not because the reversals are bad, but because they take a little bit more intellectual and emotional work for me. And I know that about myself. So that's the way we're going. And so only one card being a reversal in this 3-card spread was interesting. The first card being the reversal, it was also interesting. And what does that mean? Well, let me show you the card to you upright. Here we have this gorgeous, gorgeous figure on the Knight of Wands. You see the pot of fire next to him. You see the wand in his hand, right? Yes, the burning wand in his hand. We see the sun above and the sun below. We see a salamander that looks aflame, doesn't it? Beside him. Powerful, powerful image, I think. And we see at the bottom that the card is associated with none other than Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is, yes, another home of Jupiter. So we've got Jupiter in both the card for the day and the card that is explaining it for us, which I thought, again, was revealing. So Jupiter is really affecting my day today in a Piscean way and here in a Sagittarian way. And the Knight of Wands points to Sagittarius, which is the domicile of Jupiter, from which these mutable fire's vital attributes enter our world. So at the first we have the mutable water entering our world, mutable water's attributes entering the world, and now we've got mutable fire's attributes entering the world, commingling. And fire and water, you might be saying don't mix, but they are and it just struck me. I realized it, but it just struck me now. And it'll be important in the next card. But fire and water are complements. They're not antagonists, they're complements, elementally. At least in my mind, they are. And so they give a good balance to each other. Too much of one will kill the other, of course. But a good balance does something magical, right? And I use that word deliberately. It does something magical. It alchemizes. Alchemy is performed by two of those together. So that would have been really cool if this were upright, right? But it wasn't. It was reversed. But it's still Jupiter in Sagittarius. But we've got a little bit of be careful. Because actually, this card in reverse points to a lot of my potential pitfalls, my potential things that I can trip up on personally. And I recognize that. So, though I am seeing myself as the hanged man today, there were potentials of my falling into things like, and it's going to be really interesting when I tell you the beginning of my day, righteous indignation. I can do that in spades. Being temperamental. I can do that in spades. It's almost like the Knight of Wands is Leo's dark side. Yeah, the upright Leo, the playful, the joyful, the creative, the sunny Leo. When it goes in reverse, it turns into this. At least in my case. Reaction out of proportion to problems. I can do that, surely. Bossiness, paranoia, exaggeration. I'm not so much paranoia, but bossiness and exaggeration, I can do that pretty well too. Closet perfectionist is indicated here because that's the reason, that's the cause of the bossiness and the exaggeration and the need for control is because there's an underlying level or layer of perfectionism that is hidden in the shadows. Secretly competitive. Insecure. Yep. Anxiety expressing as temper. Yep, that's me. Move past. So this card is also recommending that we move past judgmentalism, and perhaps the layer underneath that closet perfectionism and the insecurity is judgmentalism, mostly of self, but also as projected onto other. That makes sense, right? So we've got this expansive Jupiter in the upright, but then Jupiter gets turned on his head and it's like goes into the shadows, maybe. So this was, I think, my precautionary. Don't try not to allow yourself to get triggered, and if you do, be quick to step back. I think is what this card was telling me to do today in relationship to my Hanged Man experience of a day. Or just because I am the Hanged Man. I mean, the card could actually be that simple. It could be more, no, I don't want to say just, because cards are never just anything, but it could also be the Hanged Man is referring to me as a significator because it is myself. It's my chosen significator, if that makes sense. And yeah, the material world may dominate the soul over idealistic, could all be part of that as well, but it could also be, this is you, and this is what could happen, so be careful. Right? And so, what is the advice? The advice was temperance, upright. Now, isn't this a beautiful temperance card? And simple. I don't want, simple is not the correct word, but there's as opposed to some cards which are very complex, this card has simplicity in the best sense of the word. What do we see? We see this figure, an angelic looking figure with wings, with two different vessels in the hand, and there's a heart that looks like it's a diamond perhaps, but it often looks like a heart to me. On an ocean, and there's a dove flying along beside the legs of this angelic being. So there's a clarity, I think, to this image, a simple clarity to this image, which is helpful, I think, to me. And there are details that we can see. Of course, the waves are choppy. Yeah? The bird is flying low, but straight at us. The figure is looking off to one side, not directly at us. The vessels are of two different colors. One could be silver, making us think of the moon. One could be gold, making us think of the sun. The liquid looks a little bit like a stream of urine, but let's move on. There's a rocky background here. I mean, it's a beautiful card. The garment is cloaking the figure's genitalia, though the figure looks feminine. Probably is feminine. Female, I should say, not feminine. And yeah, that little triangle does look like an itty-bitty surfboard, but still. I keep thinking of it as a heart, even though it's not a heart. And so and you see the attribution here is none other than Scorpio, which is important for me also because Scorpio is my ascending sign. And so temperance points to Scorpio, which is the domicile of Mars, from which these fixed waters vital attributes enter our world. So Mars is the more mature version of Mars. Mars on the dry path of ascension back up the ladder of lights. The cycle of the year, moving back towards the beginning, which will be at Aquarius and Capricorn, that split. And temperance. Remember what I just said a little bit ago, that there was Jupiter with water and Jupiter with fire in Sagittarius and the Hanged Man, combining, doing alchemy. So there we go, right here. The temperance. And And an interesting thing is that when we plot the paths of the tarot, of the major arcana, on the Tree of Life, the Hanged Man and Temperance mirror each other. So there's that association there, the physical association on the Tree of Life, which is good. So as an advice card, that's pretty cool. This card is asking us to reminding us to separate out the dross from the essence of what we want to keep. So there's an element of not only combining but also separating. We combine, we scoop off the excess, not the excess, but the foamy bits, right? Like when you're boiling soup, you scoop off the foamy bits so that you have a clearer broth beneath. This could also be Raphael, who is the healer angel, balancing forces of yin and yang, or of light and dark, or of silver and gold. The healer. So that's why the Temperance is often the one of healing. Also because of alchemy, the alchemy of pouring stuff into other stuff to make a third thing, but also as a chemist, the healing. Also Raphael, the healer. We bring polarized forces together here, like fire and water, Sagittarius and the Hanged Man, and live the balance. We're asked to live the balance, not just mix stuff together, but live the balance. Yeah, in justice, which will be coming up in just a moment. In justice, we are balancing things like this, right? Making sure we've got as much of this as this. Here we're asked to live in the dance of the mixture and the balance point, which is always in flux. A little bit more of this and then a little bit more of that, like riding a surfboard, which is living the balance. It's not like a balance of scales, but the balance of a surfboard. Inner and outer life. Individual, collective. Light, dark. Hot, cold. Water, fire. We want to live in the balance of those things. And knowing that as we live in the balance and we mix the directions of the spectrum, new can be born. Yeah, the medicine can be born. The new self can be born at that point of balance. Which is perhaps Mars in Scorpio doing their best work. This is a beautiful card and a beautiful thing. And the Holy Spirit here, remember, the dove here is the Holy Spirit, but it's also Sophia, the Annunciation. The Annunciation of the baptism of the Holy Spirit in the New Testament, where Christ is baptized by the Holy Spirit and which fulfills and completes the incarnation, one might say. So we're reminded of that moment. Also, we're reminded of the moment where Sophia draws the eternal into the material to create the conscious human being, or the conscious living beings, the self-conscious, the self-aware. And so I, as the eternal nature, am inhabiting this form, and I can be more aware of that at that balance point here. Which is good because, remember, we have that potential of being overwhelmed, or having been overwhelmed, not being, but having been overwhelmed by the materialness of this world. And so this is the wake-up point. And then as advice, this wasn't advice, this was challenge. Yeah. Where are you? There you are. This was challenge. This is something I think I wanted to strive for, that balance point, waking up in the physical world, waking up as spirit in the physical world. healing self. And actually, there was, well, we'll get to that a little bit. Something else I had not thought of until now. And what was I going to say? Oh yes, as far as Hebrew goes and runes go, temperance is nun, and nun is can we see the? No, it's not on this card. Nun is the serpent. And remember, the serpent is a very important astrological constellation. One of them is Hydra. One of them is Draco. But this is also the faithful one. The serpent can be the faithful one. The serpent can also be, very interestingly, Nun. Nun appears backward. Now this is a little weird, but okay. So Nun appears backwards, like it's supposed to be this way, but it's this way. To my knowledge, twice in the Hebrew Bible, in the story of Noah. And it separates out a bit of that text. There's one in the beginning and the end of a line. And so this Nun can also be the carrying of knowledge of the old world over the water of destruction to the new world. Now, the carrying of knowledge from the old into the new after a period of destruction, recreation by water generally. Yeah, which is interesting because, of course, that's what Scorpio is, right? The Scorpio is also death, and rebirth. We also have Perthro. Perthro is, in the runes, imagined as a sideways dice cup. And it's the rune for decision, mystery, prophecy, and a little bit of gambling. But it's also prophecy and mystery of Scorpio. Now, Scorpios are also a little bit prophetic in their best times and a little bit mysterious in their more interesting times. They're good at making decisions. Ask my grandmother, who has passed into the next life, good at making decisions, very clear decisions. So that is what I was to be striving for. And justice, is the advice. Justice. You can see this is a beautiful image of, and again, fire and water, right? Right chair in the image. The scales of the justice image, one scale holds water, the other holds fire. We got the sword pointing up. We got this beautiful vital tree beside justice. This justice is not blindfolded. She sees very clearly, and we have an alchemical diagram behind her head. Beautiful image. Also, less complicated than some of the other cards in the deck. Similarly to Temperance, yeah? And this card points to Cancer, which is the domicile of the moon, from which these cardinal waters, vital attributes, enter our world. Now here we have more water, cardinal water, the water that points forward in Cancer. And the Hebrew letter here is Heth, which means a fence or a gate, and it's different than the kind of fence or gate that we might be thinking of. It's not like here's the thing that protects the house or the thing you go through to get to the house, but rather this is the fence or the gate of death, but death as a womb for rebirth. That's what Heth is. The rune is Wunjo. Wunjo looks like a stick with a little flag at the very, very top, whereas Thurisaz looks like a stick with a flag at the side. This is at the top. And that's a joy, balance, group activities, like a party, and also attraction. You have the drawing of things. So it's kind of a good luck rune as well. So what does justice mean in this deck? This is Sophia as law, as Torah, or in Greek, nomos. It's the goddess of law, the goddess of the Torah, the goddess of the Greek nomos. It's also the transformation of collective consciousness. Now, consciousness is changed and is reborn through the law. And she prunes away things like bullshit. She prunes away things like falsehoods and excuses and crap with that very, very sharp double-bladed sword. She speaks truth for those who cannot speak for themselves. Because she tends to the least of us. She tends both to the individual and the general well-being of the group. It's not just like we're only going to do the good for this underdog and screw the rest of the world. No, there's a unique balance of the individual and the collective, doing the good for both, and accountability. For those who messed up, you're not punished so much as you are held accountable for your actions, both good and bad. And so the advice for this, for today, for me was, I think, allow transformation, allow the bullshit to be cut away, speaking the truth, my truth, but being careful of not going into, this, right? There's this, which is good advice, but don't go into this, which is, blowing things out of proportion. Even if you've got you're on the right side of history of an issue, doesn't mean to blow it out of proportion. It means to speak clearly for the good of all. Right? That makes sense, does it not? And so, let me tell you about my day. My day. Right out of the gate, I went right into, very surprisingly, right into here. I went right into Sagittarius reversed. Not big, not overblown. And it was good because I think it prevented me from going farther in that direction, because I saw myself doing it as I was doing it, and I caught it before I was able to move into, and then there's this, and then there's that, and then there's that, Sometimes we latch onto some irritant and we allow that to grow, and then all these other irritants start coming. Yeah. I was able to catch it before the others started coming, and the bigger ones, and becoming more reactive. But there was this little thing I saw on Facebook, and I saw it, and I saw, surprisingly, how many of my friends on Facebook were buying into this meme of a thing, which I thought was very, very bad. And so I underneath a couple of my friends who had reacted to it, I said, I can't believe that you're giving attention to, and you're doing this thing, which is childish at best. A little bit out of proportion, yes. And actually, I didn't say that part, that I can't believe that you're doing this. I'm saying, I said that I would not have bought into this meme and responded to it and given it more energy, which is childish at best. Which isn't a great way to respond, but still, it could have been more over the top. Anyways, so then I copied the meme and put it on my wall and said basically what I thought about the meme, which I thought was racist, and I thought was cancel culture in the worst way possible. There are people who do things that we don't approve of socially, and we can say that we don't approve of that person having done that thing, and maybe we want to reduce that person's influence over the rest of us. which I think is appropriate, but then canceling not only that person, but then the entire body of that person's work. When that person is not an individual worker, if that makes sense, when that person's work is a co-creation of hundreds, if not, well, of hundreds of people working together to create a work of art, canceling that person's entire body of work would also be canceling the work of countless people. That's when I say that's where we're being childish, where cancel culture has become childish and petulant. For example, let's take, and this wasn't about this man, but let's take Bill Cosby. Yeah, Bill Cosby has been accused of and has gone to prison for some pretty despicable stuff. And so we are right in deciding we no longer want him to have influence over our lives directly. All good. Saying that no one may from now on watch The Cosby Show and enjoy it, we should remove The Cosby Show from all television stations and remove everything that he has been in, is, I think, childish at best, petulant at best, because there are other people in those things. There are directors, there are writers, there are other actors, there are producers, there are people, very good, fine, upstanding people who have worked on those things, and have canceling their work as well is close to evil, if you ask me. And so an adult would be able to watch The Cosby Show, appreciate The Cosby Show for everybody else who has worked on it, and hold in their minds that this one person, this one performer, yes, the primary performer, but one performer, we don't want that performer to influence our lives. But all those other people are good people, and their work should not be ignored, I don't think. So that was basically what I was saying in short form on my wall. And so yes, I blew it out of proportion. Most probably. But when people came back and said, well, I didn't think it was that, and I didn't think that was that, and I said, okay, it's possible that I am, that this wasn't about what I saw, although it did say which one should go, and all of their work was the title at the top, which really looked to me like the dark side of cancel culture. And so I responded to that, and I said, well, perhaps there are other ways of seeing this, and yet I stand by what I believe as being the dangers of the dark side of cancel culture. So there was that. But then I realized that I didn't really want to keep this going for the rest of my day. This was at the beginning of the day. And so I stopped. I pulled back, let people say what they wanted to say on my wall. That's fine. And so within an hour, I turned my attention to something else entirely. And this is something you probably don't know about me, but I do a year ahead spread. I actually do 2 year ahead spreads. I do one at Samhain, and I do one at the New Year. Now, frankly, I believe the solar New Year is arbitrary, and I don't really believe in it personally. But that's an entirely different story. And still, I do that year ahead spread then, and with Samhain. So I have these 2 parallel running cards a month. And my 2 cards for this month were the Hermit and the Ace of Wands. Perfect for me because I've come back from camp at the beginning of this month, and I won't be starting the new semester until the end of the month. So this is a perfect month for me to be hermit-like, to be introspective, to be focusing on other things. But there's still that wand of fire of creativity in the Ace of Wands, right? And today's the first day of the month for me, and I got the itch. I got the itch to reorganize and classify my tarot library. So when in my office, I pulled all my decks off of the shelves, and I decided I'm going to, which is something I've kind of wanted to do for quite a while. I have a list of my my library of decks and tarot books, but it's just a list, and I wanted to classify them in a way that would be useful for me in the future. Perhaps in creating a website, perhaps in doing a reading website where I would have, now my thought is eventually I'll have offerings of readings per month, where I'll have one deck for the month that would be more playful, one deck for the month that would be more esoteric, one deck for the month that would be perhaps Tarot de Marseille. You see where I'm going? So that people could look and choose what deck and kind of reading they wanted from the site. But to be able to do that, I needed to have my decks organized in the fashion that I'd be able to organize a website. And so this is my first step of doing that. I decided to take that step today after lunch. And I got my decks off of the shelves, and I got a basic general organization of them, but I still need to do some organization of the largest portion of my library, which is the which is the Waite-Smith based decks. And so I'm thinking of things like my more art-based decks, my classic mass market decks, which are some of them out of print, but they're still mass market decks and they're classics, right? My clones and redrawings of Pamela Colman Smith's art, things that are just the art redrawn. That's kind of separation into categories. That's what I did today. And that was the most of the day. I also ordered some ingredients so that I could make kimchi. This weekend, I do my own fusion version of Maison Thomas kimchi, which I need to start doing again this weekend because I've almost run out. It lasts me for at least a couple of months when I make it. And I also baked bread today for the first time since I got back with my wild sourdough starter. I revived it and baked my first loaf of bread today. So there are all those other creative things that were going, but and I'm thinking of getting a Dutch oven. And I think I found the one I want at a reasonable cost. Dutch ovens in Korea are just insanely expensive. But I think I found one that's a good size. It looks like it's good metal. I might have to break off the top handle because it might not be oven safe. But why do I want the Dutch oven? I want the Dutch oven to bake my sourdough bread. I want to try doing that. And so I found something that might be around $35, $40 instead of $150, $250, which is, I think, is insane. Anyway, so that's been my day. And that's how I have lived, I think, my Hermit and my Ace of Wands, and how I think I caught myself in my my Sagittarian reversed Knight of Wands moment, and was able to move, I think, into the I don't know, did I get into justice? I think I did, maybe. I think I was more aware of not only my needs, the needs of the individual performer that was being talked about, and the needs of the collective, perhaps with justice. But also in other parts of my life, I started doing the alchemy of my tarot library. I mean, that could be an alchemical process, right? Separating and combining and reorganizing, that could be an alchemical process in temperance and in justice, maybe. And my creative urges of preparing to move into another aspect of my tarot career, maybe all of that combined. Also had a wonderful conversation with Christine Payne-Towler on Messenger which was inspiring and made me want to go buy another book. But I didn't buy the book yet. I just put it on my wish list because I've got other books I need to read first. And so anyways, that was my day. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. This really was, the last 3 days in particular have seemed to be very poignant, particularly poignant and easy to reveal to me messages and significances, and fun, just a lot of fun. I hope this has been fun for you as well. Let me know in the comments below. What do you think? If you're still here, hit the thumbs up button so that YouTube knows that you got something out of this and it will draw more eyes to the channel. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and hit that alarm bell so you get notifications of when I upload videos. I thought I would have a review, a walkthrough of a deck, but it turned out that the deck that I thought I had received wasn't the deck that I had received, and so that deck I'm not ready to do a walkthrough of, and the one that I'm waiting for is still on its way. So I'm going to be doing a walkthrough of a very good deck by Artisan Tarot sometime soon. So if you want to see when I upload that video, hit the alarm bell. That's the short and long of it. If you want to get the decks that I'm using now, the Tarot of the Holy Light by Christine Payne Towler, there's a link below. If you want to get the color version of the Egyptian Tarot, there is a link below. If you want to get a reading from me, there's an email address below, thehangedmaninthemoon@gmail.com. Send me an email and we'll get you a reading. So friends, there we are. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you. Oh, healing. Just a second. Healing. I forgot. A week ago, I pulled a muscle getting out of a car in my shoulder, and it really hurt. It really hurt for a couple of days. And it's been feeling better and better, and today it feels healed. So maybe this one, maybe temperance, the healing, could be. Well, anyways, bye-bye.